So black people have genes shared with other black people. White people have genes shared with other white people.
Right.
There isn't one that connects all Jewish people. It's just an identity.
You're not conserving British values by speaking like that.
What? No. Yeah, I know. Because according to British values, Winston Churchill is the greatest Briton who ever lived because he had a fawning love for the Jews. And that is why we've been told.
Let me come back to it. So look,
You've got to read up on Churchill and the Jews.
Yes.
It's disturbing, the quotes.
So the British codification of race, there are 6. IC1, IC2, IC3, IC4, IC5 and IC6. IC6 covers all mixed race. It's the proper code for Arabs, Middle Easterns and mixed race people.
That's a vast swathe of the world, that is.
Exactly. And I have other information that says that it comes under other.
Does anyone remember Lost? Does anyone remember the TV show Lost? Does anyone remember, I think it was called Saeed? Saeed, right?
Yeah, right, you go.
Saeed is this category right here.
There you
where
go.
The guy who played Saeed, Naeem Sawala or something, he can play any character from Arabia to South America to anything, because it's basically brown.
So they thought about
No,
this,
but
the
that
British
actually
government's
proves.
already put it there.
But
It's already
this
there.
proves my point that actually IC6 covers such an incredibly disparate group of nations.
Yeah.
That,
And values.
That it
and
really.
religions.
But would the people in these nations not be able to see the differences more clearly than me, the white person?
100%.
Right? They would. So these are relative terms dependent on who you are and where you are.
Right, okay,
Right?
good.
So, and that means that they are not categories. These are not categories of reality. They are categories, but let me do an analogy, right? I'm over 6 foot. Does that mean I am a tall person? Relatively tall, right? There we go. But suddenly, if I'm in a tall person's convention, I'm not, because they're all 6'5". Where do we put the line around tall? Where exactly is
Depends where you
the
were
line?
average.
It's the same with these.
Okay.
It's absolutely the same with these, which means that these categories are technically flexible and subject to interpretation,
Right.
whereas my Englishness is determined by my ancestry, and it can never be taken away from me, and it is real. And other people should not be able to opt into it because they have a passport.
But
Yeah.
that categorization would change if you bring it to my country, for example.
Yeah.
IC6 would look a whole lot different.
I mean, the question is, who here thinks that Stormzy is English?
No, it's not English. No,
Is Stormzy English?
No.
You could say he's a British citizen and he's a successful British rapper, but is he English?
If you go back kilometres from Ghana, no one was living in England.
No, I'm not taking that. No, because that's watering down my identity. You don't do that to the Japanese or any other ethnic group. You don't do that. You don't attack non-white people and say they don't have an identity.
I am sorry, I do need to challenge that on one aspect. It's like, look, I'm not going to dispute your ancestry, but the question becomes there might be someone coming in and saying, no, there's a drop of Roman in your ancestry, therefore you are not English by an arbitrary definition. Now, this isn't to say that this person is correct, but it depends on who has the authority to make that classification.
Yeah,
Let's
and-
take someone like me, I'm pretty much a mutt. I'm Egyptian, but then when you look at my ancestry, it's from all over the place. Part of it is European, part of it is African, part of it is Asian. Look, I could go to those white marches and they wouldn't tell the difference. Yeah, I'm Dave from Chicago. What am I?
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
this is sort of my key point, is that the boys yesterday have all identified as white, and they've been pumped full of content telling them that there's a 2-tier policing system and life sucks for white people. In the same week that Muslims have to watch a Muslim get his head stamped on by heavy-duty copper boots. I mean, bloody hell, Richard Tice making excuses for that. Is the men here? I've never worked in the police force, but I've worked on a building site, and you're not allowed to go to work without heavy-duty boots. That's the deal with the police. That should be indefensible. Richard Tice and co. kept defending it, and I think that was until these riots. I think now that the riots have happened, they can say, yes, this was appalling, we disagree with everything, but it's incredibly scary to see the first week where a political party sitting in the House of Commons just won't condemn police brutality because Muslims. Really scary.
Can I just say, in relation to this man, the categories, they're helpful in the sense that they're very crude, and if the police want to say it's IC2, that's helpful. But in terms of determining somebody's real identity, they don't mean anything. For example, if you take all the Asians, that doesn't explain why the Hindus are attacking the Muslims in India, because they're all Asians. What does determine your ethnicity and your identity is your language and your religion.
Yes.
So to me, Stormzy, he's a Christian and he's English. I don't have any problem with him asserting his Englishness, you know?
I'd like to challenge you. To clarify, there's 5 aspects of identity. 5 aspects. These aspects are what people usually use when they're assessing your identity. Place of birth. Where were you born? Yeah, people talk about that. Where were you born? It matters. Yeah. Second one, lineage. Yeah. Place of birth is separate. Lineage. Well, who are your parents? Ancestry. Yes. That matters. Yeah. Third one, appearance. That matters. Yeah. Fourth one, state of mind covers culture. Goes back to what you're saying. Language.
How you were
It's
raised,
all
where
in
you
your
were raised.
head. Yeah. State of mind is everything in your head.
Well, that's language, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So language is an aspect of the mind, right? Okay. And the 5th one, which is quite modern now, is DNA. So with these 5 aspects of identity, one should be able to, or the state is able to grasp who is a member of the state and who is not. Who is religious people.
So no, wait. The argument
It's the state of mind.
the reason I invited Mr. IC3 along here is because broadly the point that he is trying to demonstrate to everyone here in Speaker's Corner and teach everyone is that we live in a double-think society where the people are being told that race doesn't exist and you must never think about it, while the people that police us are being taught to see the world in that way very specifically, else they will not. No, but they are. Look, what's this?
But you think that proves that they're getting taught to just see...
But they have to group their targets, they have to group their suspects into these categories.
That's right.
And you're offended by it. Again, you're always offended.
It's
just, this is how they do their job. This is how they catch
here's the
people.
thing. Let's ignore the state aspect. And I'm not accusing you of racism. I know you are not. But if you were to...
No, I am.
Well, regardless.
I just don't hate anyone because of their race.
I get where you're
But I
coming-
accept that race is real.
But please bear with me. Just to finish the
Yeah,
question,
see you next time.
It's quite simple. If you were going to describe the crowd standing in front of you today,
Yeah.
not knowing anyone's names other than their physical description, how would you describe them?
English, not English, not English. Maybe English.
You see what I
Not English.
Or you would go, yeah, I had 16 white dudes,
Appearance.
a couple of black dudes, a couple of guys.
No, I can tell the difference between an Englishman and someone from
Well,
Eastern Europe who's
well,
white.
that's the thing. You would have to categorize people just to describe them in the first place to be able to communicate a circumstance.
Okay.
That does not go into legislation
So-
and rules and laws, etc., etc. Categorization in itself is not an evil. It's what comes after.
Yeah, well, okay, the broad point is that Mr. IC3 is trying to say you live in a society where the people that govern you see the world in one way, while you're being taught that to do that is immoral and you mustn't ever do it. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah, cool.
And those are the enemies of the state.
Yeah, now, what happened yesterday, I believe, is the result of this kind of double thing.
That's right. Confusion.
And that's the reason that, like, I'm on the plinth saying what I'm saying. And I think the key point is that no one should be ashamed of their race, skin colour or heritage. I think that we've had a huge campaign of white people being shamed, and that was the last decade. White people, such as me, terrified to talk about race 10 years ago. I tell you that, man, you just didn't bring it up. You just didn't bring it up, and you wanted to see everyone as all the same. Not you again. We're not talking about that today. We're not talking about that. We've moved off. Zionists hate free speech. We proved it again.
As an Englishman, why are you wearing an English flag? Why are you wearing this one?
It's a
So that they
statement.
know what side I'm on, basically.
If a Jamaican man has a baby with an English woman,
Yeah.
what race is that child?
David Curtin is
Mixed race.
IC6.
So let's
You're
say the
an IC1.
grandparents, one of the grandparents came from Jamaica, but the rest was an English. Is that a mixed race child?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, now great grandparent, there's just one over there.
Right.
How far-
Now, because
Is
this
it one
argument,
drop?
because white people and only white people get confronted with it. Has anyone ever done this to you, sir, over your ethnicity? Has anyone ever tried to, like, deconstruct your ethnicity and tell you that,
Race is a
like,
load of bollocks.
Qatar never really... Sorry, Kuwait. Yeah, Kuwait never really existed because it's just a hodgepodge, and your nation was always a nation of immigrants, right? I thought that this only happened to white people. Well, either way, the point is that people like me continually being told that they're not English because what is an Englishman anyway caused yesterday. White or English people like me being told you don't get to think like that. stop it, you're a racist, you're not allowed to do that, caused the race riots. It did.
No, they just got fed
Because
up
they
with the
feel
Muslims,
like-
that's all. They got fed up with the Muslims.
But the Muslims didn't do anything.
Controlled immigration.
Was it a Muslim that stabbed 3 girls this week? No, it wasn't. Was it Muslims who rioted in Leeds?
It's always
No, it
Muslims
wasn't.
who have got feelings. Nobody else has feelings. We don't want the picture of cartoon of Muhammad. It's going to hurt Muslims. We don't want pigs. We don't want, bacon. We don't want this. We don't want that.
Isn't
What
this the guy that justified the genocide last week?
Absolutely.
We don't want gays. We don't want lesbians.
Yeah,
'cause they
exactly.
don't exist in Islam.
He's offended by cartoons, but not genocide. Now, it's happened again. Exactly the same people. Big crowd of about 100. Same 4 people. Can't let me speak. We're not even talking about Palestine and Hamas and everything. And he's blustered in to talk. Will you condemn? No, we're talking about the denigration of the English identity right now. That's the topic of conversation.
Yeah. What about your granddad, the colonizer, who went to Clive of India? What about Sir Francis Drake? He was the biggest pirate.
I am suggesting that the English, the ethnic English, which apparently don't exist because I might have had a...
There's one here. There's one here.
Let me
There's
speak.
one here.
Will the Zionists let me
Only
speak?
if you say something sensible.
Let him ask me a question.
You don't think anything I say is 70.
He's the King English.
Yeah.
No, he's
About-
not from the kebab, isn't
We
he?
have about a 70. What? No, but this is the point I'm making: is that if I say the English exist as a group, and you
We
can
all
look.
agree. That's obvious.
Good,
English agree.
right. You
Obvious.
can look up English people on Wikipedia, and it says that there's about 300 to 400 million because we're not in England. There's loads of us in America and in Australia.
Spain.
Yeah,
In
there's-
Spain.
there's far too many in Spain, and I want them deported.
You know what?
Because they're the
Because
worst
Muslim-
English people in the world. No. The Spaniards don't deserve to suffer Brits in Spain anymore. They're
You
the
should go to
worst.
Benidorm,
They
I
need to
agree.
come back. They're destroying Spain.
Do you agree that the Church of England should conserve Englishness? Should be the conservative entity of England? Should be.
Well, I believe that
Church of
faith
England.
has to come above race or ethnic because I am a personal faith.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the
Can
chain of
I-
command for me. So sort of, but I think we're talking.
You
Can
just
race be an
mentioned a very
aspect
interesting-
of your faith? Can race be an
No,
aspect?
no, because we believe in a
What
universalist
is
faith.
the population of England?
70 mil.
No, 64 million people live in this island,
Yes.
right? Which is United Kingdom.
Yes.
And
And
you-
by 2066,
Yeah.
the native English are going to be a minority in their own country.
Right.
And because every time I say stuff like that,
Yeah.
I get hit with, but what is an English person? It's like, hang on, demographers have already calculated this. So it's not about me and my opinion. Demographers from Oxford University have determined that the native English are going to be a
Why
minority
did
in
you
their own
say there's
country.
300
Let me speak.
million England?
By 2066.
So
And every time someone like me talks about this, we get into some weird conversation about how the English don't exist because everyone's an immigrant,
Let's
right?
take
And this is causing such division
But all
because
English
people
people
are
are
in two
white.
camps. There are people now split
Why
into
is he
two
a
camps.
football
Who thinks
white?
I'm being divisive?
Great.
The two camps are white people who feel a grievance
Yes.
and people that don't believe that there
Yeah,
is
but they
such
want
thing
their
as an English
country back.
person.
They want their
Right,
country
right.
from who?
From these
you.
horrible foreigners that are making life so
From
difficult
who?
for me, right? The foreigners have never censored
Can I-
me off YouTube.
Can I just say?
The foreigners have never attacked me at the Tommy rally.
Last
The
year-
foreigners have never denied my right to speak apart from you right now.
Every time-
countries?
Every time I landed at an airport, my iris was taken, my fingerprints were taken.
Yes, because the
right?
Jews faked
Yeah,
9/11.
My picture was taken. Right. Because they controlled their fucking borders. Now these guys, yeah, they allow their country to be overrun, swarmed by uncontrolled immigration.
But aren't you one of them?
No!
Why not?
No,
Why are you
no,
not a
no.
foreigner?
I was born in Shepherd's Bush.
You're a foreigner.
But you're a
I was
foreigner.
born in Shepherd's Bush. Maybe, yeah. It's just because I'm dark, right?
See?
But
What's
then
your
again,
religion?
yeah,
What's your
because
religion?
I'm
He's
dark.
You have a religion?
But you're a paddy as well.
Yes,
I don't
what's
have
your-
a religion.
you don't- okay.
I don't have a religion.
I was born in Japan.
Yeah.
Am I?
Japanese.
Exactly. Is this a Japanese man if he's born in Japan? No, it's not.
Nani, that's
A pig born in a stable is not a horse. No, this stuff matters and it just causes grievances, right? The English exist, it's on Wikipedia.
I gotta ask a question.
We all accept that, like, Keir Starmer is much more likely to be an Englishman than Rishi Sunak was.
It's at the end of the day, so what?
So what is that the argument is that our governments are run by these things called globalists who do not care about the people, and that means that we have these interchangeable puppets.
It's like, look, you're mentioning that by 2066, assuming that is the reality.
It is.
Look, again, I don't.
Long term,
Okay,
that's generous.
regardless of the exact date and year.
Yeah.
So what if the British ethnicity is now smaller? So what?
Because the nation then doesn't exist.
No, and I'll tell you why.
No, but it does, because
No,
the nation is the land and the people.
No. If you are going to tie nationhood to a genetic structure,
Which
those
it
are
is.
two
That
different.
is Zionism.
Really? Look at me. Am I not Egyptian? My ethnicity is from all over the place.
But when
Egyptians would
England
recognize-
is majority non-English,
yes,
then it's not England.
If you
Because
take-
the definition of nation is the land and the people.
the-
No, you can't just say
No, and I'll
this
tell you
is
why.
the definition
No,
of a
and I'll tell-
nation.
No, and I'll tell you why. If you're going to tie the people to,
I'm
a
not doing
specific-
it. These
No,
are the
you're-
definitions of words.
No, that's your interpretation.
No, it's
of it.
not.
It is.
Practically,
And to
England
prove it-
is the
and
land
to
of
prove
the
it-
English.
Yes.
And to prove it, a lot of the royalty in the United Kingdom did not come from these shores. If you're talking
we
about
all
the
know
majority,
what an ethnic group is, and
it
we all
doesn't
know
matter.
when one is under
It doesn't
threat.
matter. Unless you are willing to concede that Richard the Lionheart, William the Conqueror, and even the current royal family did not originate on this island. If you are not willing to concede that Christianity did not originate here, democracy did not originate here, all of those values that are fundamental to the founding of Englishness and the British state are important. If you are not willing to accommodate, these are not
You're gonna love
byproducts
my
of your
response
blood.
to this, mate.
These are not byproducts of
You
DNA.
are going to
Please.
love my response,
Enthrall me.
which is that for the past 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years maybe, on TV, when anyone like Nigel Farage brings up their concerns, they get that lecture
Okay.
that you just gave me. The point is you don't care.
No, I do.
No,
I
you
do.
no.
Finish your piece.
People like we have had to put up with this argument to say you don't get to complain about the problems that you are seeing with your own eyes because of mass immigration, because your English identity doesn't even exist. And what has happened... No, don't interrupt me.
I'm not interrupting you.
Because I'm saying that this is by being gaslit about our real ethnic identity and the fact that there are less of us in the country and more non-English people in the country every single year, and we keep getting race and ethnicity are separate things.
Have you finished your answer, or are you going to add more to that?
Is that because anytime someone like me says, hey, this is breeding resentment, and I don't like it because I don't want the natives and non-natives in any kind of war against each other, because that's a horrible situation to be in, and it's literally what happened yesterday. By being gaslit with these kind of lectures and arguments, you now have Reform UK, and you now have the Tommy Robinson movement, and you have all of these aggrieved people because they don't have a voice, and they say that Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage do give them the voice and they're champions of the people, but they're all servants of the Jews!
So can I answer that? And again, I'm going to end it because I know this is going to go on. Here's the question that I'm asking. So what does any of that have to do with the value of DNA? If nationhood is tied to DNA, then what is the point of all of these other values? Because everything else I've described doesn't tie to DNA. And these are the things that I have an admiration for the British people for, are those values. What their blood type is, how your teeth and eye color works, to me, is irrelevant. It may have value to you, sir. And I'm not going to dispute its value.
Exactly. This is why the Greek guy that's on the Lotus Eaters is considered a better representative of England than I am. No, I just assume that you're a Lotus Eaters fan. No, but the point is that actually the alternative media is rammed with people that are not English that get a job there to talk about how England is being destroyed, while I have been completely gaslit by this same clique of people who are funded by Zionists to say it's the Muslims' fault and the rioters aren't really rioters, they're just people with concerns and that's why they're looting Sainsbury's, right? I, as an Englishman, am not allowed on the incredibly diverse GB News, which apparently represents the voices of the British people with Nana Akua, loads and loads loads of hosts who are not white, and I think more than 50% homosexual hosts, which is a bit suspicious considering their relative numbers in the population is 1 to 3%. It's a bit like a nepotistic network, that one to me. Wonder if there's any blackmail going on. Yeah, the point I'm making is that I was really appalled this week when the Lotus Eaters were shitting on Jeremy Corbyn for showing up at the anti-Tommy rally and going, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, he's wrong about everything. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's the only MP that stood up against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and all of them and formed the Stop the War Coalition. And he was democratically elected as the leader of the Labour Party. He was removed only because of Israel lobby groups. And it was a Greek guy sitting down there laughing at Jeremy Corbyn, and I'm like, this is the problem, right? Me as an Englishman, I have to constantly deal with this, yeah, but what is English? My free speech rights are taken away because I keep getting banned off YouTube. I can't go down to the Tommy rally without getting arrested or assaulted, so I'm taking Tommy Robinson stewards to court. And my diagnosis of this is, as long as you say the right things, you can be English, no matter what your damn race is. You just have to say there's too many foreigners, and it doesn't even matter if you're black. It's just becoming complete nonsense. And so that's my argument, is can we get real? You don't need to do a DNA test. I know you brought out the DNA test saying, how are we going to determine who's English? Well, Mr. IC3 already brought it out. You can tell that I'm English by looking at me. Maybe you do a DNA test and it would... No, it's not. You can tell that... one look at Sean and you might think that he was English. He opens his mouth and you'd know he's not.
That'd be
Because
right.
he's Irish.
You got right.
But you're doing it ethnicity with race.
I don't think I am. I mean, race, I think, is a useless political category because, for instance, now that we're all white, we have white privilege, and we're the white oppressor class over the non-white people around the rest of the world. Well, that's complete bollocks, because most white people were peasants. When did the Welsh ever have power until they became white? The Welsh were always, and definitely the Irish, right? Always people that didn't have power around the world, but now they're white, they've got privilege, and there's racial grievances and stuff because they're part of this category, which is actually called the 1%. The white stuff and getting people angry at white people and feeling aggrieved is camouflage for the people.
I don't think many people here.
Sorry?
Why the language?
And they're not, and we're not all white because the Welsh matter. And it's not even that long ago. It was within the last 20 years. There was this huge push to save the Welsh language because no one was speaking it anymore. So it's one of those few things that the devolved governments have done, which is actually really cool. Is there was a push to preserve the Welsh language and get all Welsh students learning a bit of Welsh in school. I love that. Can we put up our hands if we think that's good? That's good. Welsh kids learning Welsh. Absolutely. But don't mock it, mate. It's good. Yeah, and then I said,
you argued against a straw man in the form of like the progressives that overuse the term white to try and denigrate someone and say you have privilege. Yeah, that's a separate argument. Yeah, race, as we normally describe it, most people say there's genetic pools of people that are similar, and I can slap on English to that pool.
No.
Do you agree with that or not?
No, I think that race is a fluid category, whereas I was born in England to English parents, so no amount of like me integrating into Japan will ever make me a Japanese person.
That makes you English ethnicity because you have English parents brought up in English. But then I asked you if a Jamaican man had a son with an English woman, and that person was raised in England, had all English life. Would you ask them? Are they an English ethnicity? Are they ethnically English?
No, anyone who's got DNA or genetics or ancestors that are not English can never be English.
So
of course you can adopt English culture. Well, the Cornish would consider themselves separate, wouldn't they? I'm not sure if I would. I don't think so, no, because they haven't broken off and formed their own nation. They're mixed race, they're half English.
Is that half?
No, and then you go on the thing and you go, yeah, but what if this grandparent? And then we don't have Englishness anymore. No, and I'm not allowed to say the English will be a minority by this date, even though they objectively will be. That's what we're getting at, is that you can't just say, no, the English aren't real because of this, when demographers are publishing data saying that the English will be a minority. Are you saying that they're wrong? Are you saying...
You're doing the same confusion in them surveys that them demographers do. They go, what's your ethnicity?
Yes,
no,
because the demographers have calculated it.
The demographers, but they are not checking people's DNAs.
But they're the guys that have PhDs in demography from Oxford University. Yes. You're coming along going, Yeah, but I think I can deconstruct your entire field of research.
No, I'm not doing that.
But you're the world expert in.
I could say yes, possibly if they're using the term ethnicity, English ethnicity, you could say people are going to write Polish or Romanian or Italian on their ethnicity thing. Yeah?
But it's not a
And
poll
so
of
the
what
English
people.
ethnicity might diminish, but that also doesn't really make sense. Because
But you're
everyone's gonna be
saying-
in England, trying to live an English life. Yeah, you are the one that are trying to preserve some sort of genetic. Yeah, you can't.
And so you're saying, no, but because of this weird reason, you don't get to notice that.
No.
And that is causing these problems. We need to say, if the English become a minority in England, just as it would be in any country, that should be considered a tragedy. Because quite frankly, there are enough English people who are terrified of it. And they're rioting in the streets, right? They're really scared of it. I don't see why it would be immoral to be in the English constitution, which we don't have, to say the English shouldn't be allowed to become a minority in their own country. Does anyone think that's immoral?
How would you define English? How do you become English?
There is no such thing as English because whenever
I'm English.
yeah, but you're desperately trying to prove that like there is no English. Do you, you look English to me, sir. I'm sorry if this is offensive. You don't, sir.
Are you fully English?
It's
Have you got any
he
blood,
doesn't
drop
either.
of blood from somewhere else? Oh yes. He's got Spanish blood. Get out of my country.
Oh, because it's not immigrants' fault.
Maybe this is a
But
political issue.
immigrants are generally having more babies.
Yeah, maybe.
Conversation to prevent yesterday's protests happening because you've got two groups of people that can't talk to each other anymore. You've got white people that feel like their country's going down the pan, they've got to take their country back. And this lot over here who go, well, what are you complaining about? Aren't you just a racist? And I'm here to sort of be in the middle and say, hey, I'm literate in both sides. Let's all chat, basically. I mean, I guess so, but that's just virtue of the fact that it's our home country anyway. So you're going to have people who are left wing and right wing and all fighting. But that's the reason that Operation Muslim Vote was so successful, because the Muslims are not dividing themselves into like I'm a Labour left winger or right or whatever. No, but the point is the Muslims completely came together and got 5 independent MPs into Parliament on a anti-genocide vote, which is inspirational. It's not even the same.
Well, can I just answer this man here? A very good point. The
He's
reason.
back! Yes! He's back! The man that coughed on me is back! Yes! Come here, mister!
If you want to talk about the English as a group that have particular DNA, right, and an ancestry, well, the 2 big reasons is in 1929 the Church of England said artificial contraception was moral, which it isn't, and in 1967 abortion was legalized, and since then there have been 11 million abortions, not just by the English as you would describe them, Nick, but by people living here. So that's the problem. That's the reason any group it's a kind of a self-destructive choices to make.
Yeah, so my belief is that like the real issue we've got in the UK at the moment is that you've got these voices like Tommy Robinson who basically say that these problems, which are very deep cultural problems, like the natives are not breeding and replacing themselves, the capitalists that run our society are scared it's going to collapse, so you need to keep bringing people in to do the jobs and basically looking after the aging population in the care homes. It's sort of just a necessary factor of the capitalist system.
Isn't that a result of industrialism?
Yes, I think basically the big problem is that the nations aren't producing their own stuff anymore. There is no logical reason why any nation should need to pinch people from another nation to keep going, and I've always found that argument really disturbing and disgusting. Like, if we didn't have immigrants, who would do the shit jobs? Quite frankly, kids, yeah, exactly. Kids should go and do shit jobs as their first job. It's my opinion. They should, because it puts hair on your chest. And they should be doing apprenticeships and stuff. The idea that we just pinch them from around the world is horrible.
As an Egyptian,
yeah.
I'm 15, right?
Yeah.
I work a job back in Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay? I work at the factory.
Yeah.
And most people, because we're a poor country, in Egypt, the population, 90% of it, or around like 80 to 90%, are below the poverty.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have big companies, like, let's say Vodafone, who open centers in Egypt, call centers.
Yeah.
And they pay...
Because they can pay you so little.
Egypt's minimum wage.
Yeah. This is all so important. We need to have a conception of this, that like, if you're Egyptian and you can see that Egypt is being raped by these multinationals, you can see that something is being done. I'm saying that we overall, globally, have a bit of a problem where nations aren't self-sufficient anymore, and they used to be.
It's not self-sufficient.
Every nation should be. Yes, that's a great question. Can you say it louder for the question?
Why the English people in the north feel culturally disconnected and isolated?
This is where I will flip a little bit on the sort of Islam question, which is I have no problem with Muslims, but I can see that we're going to have a problem if there's 5 million in Yorkshire. Do you understand that issue? Where suddenly there's just so many people that weren't there before, and there's not really any conversation about what's going on. The other element in this, as I've made very clear, is that there's this multi-pronged attack which is aimed at different demographics. Like Tommy Robinson is down here aiming at the working class football lads, but Douglas Murray was aiming at me, and all of it is designed to make us terrified of those Muslims, and we're in a really scary position now.
I have a question for you. Just 1 second, sorry. You seem to want to push for the preservation of what constitutes, an English person, which is fair.
Yeah.
No one has qualms with that. But you seem to object to other ethnicities or other backgrounds and preserving theirs. So if there is a no, 1 second. When you say that there is a concentration of like 5 million Muslims in Yorkshire, for instance, that's obviously after a push to conserve their sort of culture.
Well,
if they were to spread out, that culture would be less preserved.
I think that
you see where kind of...
I get what you're saying, and I think the Muslims are like a key example, and I've been just so impressed by them in the last year with like Operation Muslim Vote. Endless peaceful protesting, just behaving really well while the media denigrates them and says that they're all violent terrorists and stuff like that. So what I've observed is that the Muslims are like really cohesive, and I think that threatens the Northerners because not only do they not understand it, they're being encouraged not to understand it. And a lot of the rioters say stuff like, it's a foreign conflict, it's over there, why are you waving a Palestine flag here? These are not our concerns. And they obviously are our concerns because Britain's supplying the weapons.
No one argues that they're not a concern. What I'm saying, how do you square the circle that suggests if you're English, you're allowed to concentrate, you're allowed to be the majority in any place. But if you're non-English, you're not offered that same freedom of congregating and of preserving your ethnicity or of preserving your culture.
It's not really about freedom, it's that this will happen naturally, right?
Yeah,
so basically,
so we shouldn't riot against it. You should solve it by procreating. English people should procreate more. And it's not rioting against Muslims or people of color. That should be.
The economic conditions for us to reproduce are basically rubbish, and we have a generational...
Do you think Muslims have it better, though?
No, I don't. I think
they've lost their Christian faith for the most part. They're contracepting, they're aborting their own children.
Huge element.
And God loves children.
Absolutely.
And He's blessing the Muslim people because they still love children and families. So I'm sorry, I think the Yorkshire people have themselves to blame. And what they shouldn't do, and what Tommy Robinson wants to do, is instead of saying you need to sort out your immoral life,
absolutely,
he's saying no, you blame the Muslims.
Yeah, this is it.
The other last part is he never says, well, I wonder why there are a lot of Muslims coming to England. Would it have anything to do with bombing Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria
and Libya
and creating all of this absolute hell in the Middle East? So that's another blind spot. But I think the primary problem is if you're going to lose your faith, start contracepting and aborting your own children, don't be surprised if God allows other people to occupy that space.
Yeah, because I am a man of faith, and it meant that yesterday was horrific for me. It was really nasty just seeing all of this footage happen, because I try and do whatever I can to prevent situations like that. Basically, it's the thing that I care the most about. Is I want these English people who are in this state of fear because Tommy Robinson has put them into it, to A, have a voice, but actually B, get used to talking to other people so they can understand that maybe they're not angry about the right thing at all and they've misdiagnosed it. And so what has happened with the Tommy Robinson movement is that you've essentially got a guy who has said, nah, it's okay, you can attack them. I think, Ravi, you're the best at explaining this. Don't worry about it. We'll cut that bit out. But it's basically that Tommy Robinson will never tell his audience off, no matter how badly they behave. And they behave badly. They behave very badly. He gives them free license to get as drunk as they want and be a dick. And I think that there's a certain class of person in England who likes that, and they really hate me turning up and saying, "Nah, you got to do better. You got to do better than this," because that's what's happening at the Tommy rallies. I'm not even turning up with a keffiyeh, because that would be that'd really get them going. But they know my face because I make videos about Tommy's cocaine habit, and then they kick me out the rally. And I'm just trying to escalate this entire situation, and everyone thinks I'm an attention seeker and a troublemaker for doing it, and I'm like, what's Tommy Robinson? If not an attention seeker and a troublemaker.
Just regarding the 5 million Muslims in Yorkshire,
yeah.
I'm just wondering, like to myself, what if those 5 million Muslims were white? Would they have an issue with that?
I think they do, because I think do you know Bob Carter? He's from Five Pillars, but he's a white guy.
Robert Carter, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Carter, right?
He's a decent guy.
He's a really decent guy. I reckon, but he's got a beard that makes him quite obviously Muslim, right? And imagine he showed up to one of those rallies yesterday with some Muslim friends. He would have got beaten up, no question about it. He would have got beaten up for being a race traitor, and he would have. 100%. And I think that proves that this isn't about race, because he was a white guy and he would have got beaten up. So the guys who are rioting, I mean, I don't think anyone rioting really understands what they're doing at all, because it's really just an outburst of energy. So, sorry, do you have a question? It looked like you did.
Do you think it's more of a cultural clash?
Well, yeah, it is. And my fear is that the English are uninformed, so they're going to lose the debate. They look ridiculous. We prove this every week with the Zionists, is that you come here, you defend Israel, you look like an idiot, and we embarrass you online, basically. And all of the Tommy Robinson fans, is it just holding Israel? Now, this is something I really despise, actually, which is Christian Zionists winding up Muslims. You guys, they so far have not debated me. I'm here saying I'm a Christian anti-Zionist, and I haven't yet had one of these angry, horrible, belligerent people talk to me about dispensationalism.
You know, when you left, there was this clown.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it before. Did you give up on him, guys?
I wanted to stand in and debate a little. People like him, they don't want to prove their point.
No, they're just angry.
They just spew shit and hate because there was a huge Muslim crowd there.
Yeah.
When they came to object,